The Michael Jackson musical is here, and so are some big questions. Jackson was definitely a genius. He was the survivor of an abusive childhood, an inspiration for Black Americans, a once-in-a-generation performer. He was possibly also a pedophile. So, as the joyful and acclaimed stage show MJ the Musical arrives in Australia, hot from a Broadway triumph, we ask some big questions about the man, his music, and where art meets real life.
Have you taken it over the last 5 years? I mean,
Success?
Yeah. Has it affected you much?
In a joyful way, in a rejoicing way, because I love it. You have to like it to be in it this long.
Bridget Cormack is the Deputy Editor of Review, our art section in the Weekend Australian. Bridget, you saw MJ the Musical on Broadway. Tell me, what was that like, the whole experience?
So I went there back in 2022. I wasn't there for the premiere, but it was during its premiere run. And the audience was extremely vocal. So, you had audience members yelling out, "Go Michael," sort of chanting things and getting up and dancing in their seats. And it was very clear that Michael Jackson was this cherished figure for them. The vocalisation of it all was just amazing. It's impossible not to get swept up in the excitement and the energy of these songs that so many of us grew up with.
You've been struck by a smooth criminal.
As a human being, even in life, he was controversial. He was possibly misunderstood, highly criticised, and had some behaviour that he admitted to, like, for example, sharing a bed with a 12-year-old, which saw him charged with criminal offending. He was never convicted. And now in death, we're grappling with the idea of his music still being part of the culture, of being celebrated again. What's your sense of how the audience, both on Broadway and here in Sydney, were feeling about that? Did you get any sense of that?
Personally, I felt as a journalist, I should go and see the musical to see what it's all about and see how it does or doesn't grapple with his difficult legacy. In Sydney, people were very much there for a good night out. I mean, it's the premiere, you've got the red carpet and that sort of thing. I imagine there were a lot of people who went home and said, well, hang on, what about these allegations? These weren't really dealt with in this show at all.
How did they handle that within the show itself?
It's interesting that one of the narrative threads throughout the work is this MTV film crew who were there to get a behind-the-scenes look of Michael Jackson preparing for this dangerous world tour. These are journalists, so journalists are supposed to uncover the truth, but they don't touch on these allegations at all. And then the audience kind of is left to wonder, well, what allegations are they referring to?
And what about other aspects of trauma or difficulty in his life? His abusive childhood, for example, is that touched upon?
Yeah, actually there's a huge storyline about his relationship with his father. So the musical goes back in time and looks at his childhood, his time in the Jackson 5, and how his dad really, really pushed him to perfection.
In review and throughout your career, you've covered all sorts of forms of art and a lot of artists who are now being reconsidered. What's your sense of how Michael Jackson is treated in that context?
You can't dispute that this is fantastic music. I think we were talking before, these performers shouldn't be punished for what Michael Jackson did or did not do. But you also can't ignore these allegations. If you cancel their works, it's a great loss to culture, but also what happens to the conversations that we're having? These are important conversations to have. So, you watch something like MJ and you go home and you have really important conversations about it, and allegations against Michael Jackson are still in progress, aren't they? So I think that's the awkward factor, because we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, he wasn't convicted when he was alive, but we don't know the outcome of these allegations.
If he were a pedophile, if we believe that he was, or that he had been convicted, or the upcoming trial of the two men who accused him in the 2010s, if it is found by a court that he did abuse them. Does that mean this musical is unviable, do you think?
I mean, again, it's really up to audiences whether this is a production that they want to go and see, whether for them the love of his music and the artistry of the performers that are on stage, whether they can compartmentalise the other aspects to enjoy what is a good show.
Can we cancel art? Should we cancel art?
I personally am anti-cancellation, but I'm definitely pro honest conversations, because these conversations are important whether you're talking about art or life. And by cancelling something, maybe you lose that avenue for having these important conversations. Maybe this is holding the perpetrator or alleged perpetrator of such acts accountable, but because we're not forgetting what they've done.